Hello, I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. Welcome to a new episode of ATV-TALK and Motorsports Podcast. Please join us every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We bring you interviews with industry professionals, live events, live news about the motorsports industry in every episode. Enjoy the show. Whether we are out riding with our friends and family or racing in extreme environments, we all need good tires. That's why I recommend GNCC Power Sports Tires, a division of Greenball Corp. Their products, which include XC Master, Mini Master, and Groundbuster 3, are what leading professionals in the ATV-UTV industry are using. You can get your tires at greenballtires.com or find them on Instagram as GBC Tires for further inquiries. Are you looking for the best suspension technology for your sport ATV? Look no further than Elka Suspension, the industry leader in sport ATV suspension technology. With championship wins in prestigious events such as the Dakar Rally, Score, Best in the Desert, ATV MX, Cross Country, and Works, Elka Suspension has established itself as the go-to choice for athletes and enthusiasts alike. But they don't just stop at ATVs. They're constantly expanding into new markets, including UTVs, trucks, SUVs, pit bikes, snowmobiles, and more. Their commitment to innovation and quality means they're always looking to improve and adapt so you can enjoy a smooth ride wherever you go. Want to learn more about what Elka Suspension can do for you? Visit their website at elkasuspension.com or give them a call at 450-655-4855. They will always be happy to answer your questions and help you find the perfect suspension solution for your needs. Tom Tokay, welcome to ATV Talk, sir. How are you?
Great, Leonard. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Long time coming. You know, being that I started this for history, should have had you on when we started this thing to really get it kicked off.
Yeah, you're going back pretty far now. I didn't realize this year will be the 40th year since the ATVA, GNCC series started.
Well, I go all the way back to 1969 when the very first US 90 came to the United States, and my dad went to the Honda show. And in episode 3, we talk about it. And his first comment when he seen it was, "Why would anybody buy one of those?"
Oh, I hear you. I actually started out on a Honda Mini Trail. I think it was a 69. I was 5 years old, and I couldn't believe, we just swung by this dealership, and I think it was $300 for a Mini Trail then. And we bought this Honda Mini Trail, and, back then I was so small, 5 years old, it's like up past my waist. And so my mom wouldn't let me ride it unless they were there. And I said, if I can get it started, can I ride it? And so I went down the garage, and I was heck bent on getting it started. I got it started and took off riding, and the rest is history. But the way I got into three-wheelers was in the Pittsburgh area. Back then, we had significant snowfall in the winter. So I had a dirt bike and I had a snowmobile, but then it was like, there were times I couldn't ride either. And I'm like, oh, I see this Honda 185S, I think it was, three-wheeler. And that was my three-wheeler. So I sold my motorcycle, sold my snowmobile. I'm like, I could ride this three-wheeler all year long. So I was happy. I rode practically every day, because that's the other thing I was going to mention. Things are so different now. No video games, no social media. So to keep out of trouble, if you had something to do, that kept you out of trouble. So I think that's my mom's ulterior motive. And I'm happy to say it worked, because I had a great place to ride. I had a 10-mile track laid out. Like I said, I rode almost every day year round. It was pretty nice.
In our pre-conversation, you were telling me about the first original name of the series. Can you go over that again for me?
Sure. Dave Coombs was the promoter, which is Racer Productions founder, and it was started off just motorcycles, and it was the Wiesco 100 miler series, and it was pretty rugged and brutal, and like its name implies, it was 100 milers for motorcycles, which is unbelievable. And the tracks that he laid out were just so technical then that they were unbelievable. So I started racing in '82. That's one thing. My mom wouldn't let me race till I was 18. So 1982, I graduated. So I'm riding with my buddies, and they're like, "Hey, they're racing three wheelers out at the local track." They says, "You look pretty fast. You ought to try it." And I think at that time I had my 250R because they were out then, the fat front wheel one. And so I bought a set of flat, the low profile uh, tires, and went out there. And the first race I got third, and I'm like, oh, I was hooked after that. Just every weekend, I was racing once or twice then.
So that were you racing a local motocross track at that point?
Yes, yes.
How did you get tied into the woods?
Well, Dave Coombs ran the motocross tracks also in the Pittsburgh Morgantown area. So there was, of course, High Point Raceway where they held the motorcycle nationals, and then also later on they started running Steel City Nationals, which was near Pittsburgh also. But then there was a local, it was a car dirt track. I think it's a half-mile track, and so they built a motocross track in the infield of it. And so that, like I mentioned, in '82, I went racing motocross there. And so, being that Dave was the promoter of the Wiesco 100 miler series and the three motocross tracks in the area, he said to me, "Hey, Tom, I'm going to start racing three wheelers in the Wiesco 100 miler series next year. I'd like you guys to come out and try it." And so, of course, he told all us three wheeler guys that raced the local tracks to come out and try it. And yeah, I'll never forget it. Like I said, his tracks were really technical, unbelievable. And nothing against today's tracks. I know, now you got what, 1,000 riders, and you couldn't possibly have that technical of a track nowadays. It would just bottleneck everywhere. And I remember the first race, it was snowing. It was a Big Bear. It was snowing, and I mean, my hands were frozen to the handlebars when we were done at that race. It was at Big Bear. Yep.
And he raced in the wintertime, summertime, he didn't care.
Well, we got to remember we're Pittsburgh, Morgantown area, and we would start even in April. You could have some good snows and cold temperatures even in April. So it typically started April and ended like October, but you're pushing, late winter or early winter in the fall. So you could have some, definitely, especially in the mountain areas. In that area.
Tom, you're talking to a guy that lives in Southern California and wears shorts year round.
Oh, no. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm not into the cold.
Well, as I get older, and I like to think smarter, yeah, I'm not into the cold anymore either.
Well, you go out and you race that 82 250R, and then you rode in that 100-mile series, and you said you won the very first championship in '83.
Yes, that's true. In '83, that was the first official year, and it was still the 100 miler series. Of course, you couldn't expect us three wheelers to go 100 miles, so it was 2 hours plus one lap. So if you come in 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds, guess what? You were going back out for another lap. So that's how he started off running the three wheelers.
Oh, that had to have been brutal.
Oh yeah, it was. And like I said, some of the tracks were so rough and technical, off cambers, and just so tight. You're lucky if it was 4 foot wide at certain places, especially when we start off with three wheelers. And in the West Virginia mountains, the rocks are just unbelievable rough there. So at times, my personal opinion, I would say Big Bear Campground, which is in Brewston Mills, West Virginia, was probably the hardest track over Blackwater also. But Blackwater had more popularity. It did have the peat bogs, which is something that's out of this planet. The peat bogs, and of course, you had river crossings, and you did have rocky sections. But personally,
Do you think Blackwater would have been near as exciting if it wouldn't have been for the people damming up the creeks?
uh, yes, but spectator wise, Blackwater was more accessible because you had the 93 river crossing. You started in the town of Davis. So that was a big, money maker for the town itself. You started off with the creek crossing, and then, a couple miles in, you actually had a river crossing, and you went out the power lines, and the laps there at Blackwater were between 20 and 25 miles, depending on the year. So you were lucky if you did 2 laps typically on 3 or 4 wheelers, where the bikes typically did 4 or 5 for the 100 milers. But it was pretty rough out there. Yeah, but it had, like I said.
So I got to go ride around a little bit at Blackwater with Bob Sloan.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you got to enjoy the.
I got to see it before it was flooded.
Oh, okay, yeah. Uh, so yeah, the mud fleas at the 93 river crossing. Yeah, that was that. I'm sure people lived all year for that. They'd wet down the banks, and but they'd help you up if you had to try the main line. You couldn't. There's always paths off to the side, but they didn't want you avoiding that main hill climb out of the river there. Yeah, they wanted you to at least give it a shot, and they'd pull you and your bike up there. There's plenty of videos online of the Blackwater 93 river crossing.
I don't have the results for the Blackwater in front of me, so I don't know all of the winners in all the classes for the years. Did you win the Blackwater? And if you did, how many times?
Would you believe it? That's the only race I've never won. For
Really?
one reason or another. Uh, Let me see. Let's say 84, and I was gonna save this story for one time or another, but now's as good as any. So Kawasaki came out with their Ducati, and so you compare that to the Honda on paper, and it was like, wow, Kawasaki was hands down the winner. So the dealership I was riding for at that time sold Hondas and Kawasaki, so I buy the Kawasaki, and so set it up for the races and start racing it. But unfortunately, I think I DNF'd. I was leading 4 times, the first 4 races, and DNF'd on that 3-wheeler. So what am I going to do? Here comes Blackwater. So actually, my sister had a 250R. So I'm like, I need to ride your 250R in the Blackwater. And all my friends were like, you need to get back on a Honda. So I borrowed my sister's, and I don't know if you remember that year, on the axle, they had the 2 nuts that jammed it into the bearing carrier. And unbeknownst to me at that time, I guess corrosion would get in those threads between the nuts and corrode it. And sure enough, I'm winning Blackwater that time. First lap, the axle breaks right in half between those nuts. I'm like, what's the chances of this? Again, I was leading, and the axle breaks. And so the rest of the story, it's still exciting. So I'm sitting there, and like I said, Blackwater's 20, 25 mile laps. People were coming through with flat tires. Hey, buddy, not even knowing who I is, can I borrow a tire? So by the time the race was over, I'd loaned all my tires away. Anything else anybody needed, a lever, if you need a lever. So now my, 3-wheeler sitting there cannibalized. And like I said, the track was so far out of town and remote that by the time they got to me, of course, back then we didn't have these great LED lights and all. So they came out. So they had to bring me tires, they had to bring an axle, and we put the bike back together out there in the middle of nowhere. And I rode back. Of course, at that point, I'm cold. Once it got dark, the temperature dropped. I'm soaking wet. I'm cold. I think I made it back to town 10 o'clock that night. So
wow.
Yeah.
How mad was your sister?
Well, I don't know. I had to fix it up, put everything back, and like. But I think after that, I think the new 4 tracks. No, I think I got the new 3-wheeler then. Yeah, yeah.
So you went and rode an 85 250R for a while?
Yes, yeah. So that was one nice thing in the fall. The last 2, 3 races, depending the new that next year's 3-wheelers or 4-wheelers would come out.
Right. Okay. So you in 84, Teddy Trey won the title, just squeaked it out and
Yes,
just barely beat you, correct?
that's correct. Like I said, I started out on the Kawasaki, and I think I was looking at the results. I DNF'd the first 4 races, and back then that was another thing I was looking at. I didn't realize till just looking back today that the first several years there was only 7 races in the series. That it wasn't until '87 that there was 11 races in the series. So with 7 races, and I think they might have let us throw out one of our worst finish. I'm not sure. So with those 4 DNFs, I think I got a first, second, and first the last 3 races. But the DNFs really kill your scoring. If I would have just came in, top 10, you would have got some points. But a DNF, you don't get any points. And so the last race at Loretta Lynn's come down to where Teddy Trey finished and Mike Holbert. And so so I always kid Teddy. Teddy Trey and I are still friends, and I still kid him to this day. I'm like, I had won by a couple minutes or whatever, and so I'm anxiously waiting to see who comes out of the woods next. And Mike Holbert had been leading the whole race, and then sure enough, out of the woods comes Teddy Trey with Mike Holbert right on his tail, and so I lost, like I said, by a point or two that year.
So they must have had trouble throughout the year as well.
I guess, yeah. Because I didn't know till recently when we talked about the event where Team Honda showed up at Loretta Lynn's. I says, when I looked at the results, I'm like, Teddy, what happened to you there? Because him and I typically always battled it out. We were pretty close time wise, and I think he said his swing arm broke or his chain and sprocket broke or something. I'm like, oh, because you would have been a lot, because he was down at the bottom of the results for that race. And so that was just recently.
I seen that sheet that you sent me and saw that. And we'll get into that in just a little bit.
But, okay.
Because I'm friends with Mike, but when Teddy was on, he did make sure to comment about his 84 title, that the only reason he won is because you had problems.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Teddy's a good old boy.
Yeah, he knew that that it was that way. He was also thinking that you and him probably would have got more Honda help if it wouldn't have been for the news article that came out on TV. That you guys probably would have.
Oh yeah, that changed industry, not for the good for the riders. And I understand, Honda was at the forefront, with making the 3-wheelers, and so they got the most and worst publicity from it. And so, yeah, because after that came out, they dropped their team, and I heard it was because their legal department said they don't want to be accused of promoting an unsafe sport. So with all the lawsuits going down with 3-wheelers.
Well, it's just spineless people, but that's we can get into that another day, another time. Yeah, I'm still pissed about it. But when you were running those years, we were also talking that your first title was mainly won raced on a 3-wheeler, so we'll give that a 3-wheeler title.
Okay. Yep.
You rode against an 85. The other guy was on an 85 Suzuki.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Jeff Bernard. He was a top rider, and once he got that Suzuki dialed in, as long as he didn't break down, uh, he could definitely win the overall. Because as we all know, the advantage of a four-wheeler over a three-wheeler.
So you won 2 more titles after that.
Yes,
and
and they were
on a four-wheeler.
yes, yeah. A lot of people don't realize that that's more than once. That because I come out of retirement once and rode for Mickey Dunlap, and so he thought the same thing. Well, you won how many years on a three wheeler? I'm like, well, really, the first year I started on a three wheeler, but finished on a four wheeler. Yeah.
What was the transition like for you to go from the three-wheeler? Because I mean, you talk about your history back all the way to 185S as a young man riding the three-wheelers, and then all of a sudden you see this four-wheel thing and you're like, well, let's give it a try. And so what was the transition like for you?
Okay, well, it all started again, the group of riders that we raced, and off season we still rode together. There was a group of us, and Jimmy Wise and Roy Daines. They all lived down closer to Morgantown, and I'd go down there and ride with them. And there's another fella, Bill Lutz was the first one that I personally saw that had a Suzuki quad racer. And Bill was a good-hearted guy, and he wasn't a top rider. And then so we're riding, we all have our three wheelers, and Bill usually would fall behind, and so we we realized first time we go riding, Bill's right on our tail. We're like, what's up with this four wheeler? There must be something to this. At first we're like kidding about it. You're gonna keep us with us on that four wheeler, and sure enough, he did. And we're like, uh-oh, I think we're gonna have a problem here.
So how did you come about to did you ride one before you bought one?
No. Um, I was still had the mindset that I could win on a three wheeler. But as I saw, an average rider on a four wheeler could keep up with the top riders on a three wheeler. I'm like, uh-oh. John Ayers, he owned Gear Racewear at the time. He raced Summit Point on a quad racer, and John was an accomplished rider in his time. And I mean, he still wasn't that old back then. And he raced that quad racer, and he's battling with me. I'm like, who's this new guy? And he was on a quad racer, and at Summit Point, and I'm on my three wheeler, busting my butt and trying to hold him off. So I think my first quad racer, I traded someone had a quad racer they wanted to get rid of. And I says, well, you want to trade me for my three wheeler? And I think that's how I ended up with my first quad racer. Yeah.
So you rode a Suzuki.
Yeah. I think I started out with that. Yep. I think that was in the off season to get ready. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you
and then I realized that there is a big advantage having that extra wheel up front. Once you got it through the trees, that was the only downside. Where the three wheeler, you didn't have to worry too much about the front end. It was just the back end.
Were you still riding local motocross stuff too at the same time?
Oh, yes, because like I said, with 7 races in the GNCC or Wiesco 100 miler series every weekend. Friday night it was called Motordrome Speedway. That's the one inside the dirt track. So Friday night I was racing there. Typically Saturday I'd race motocross somewhere, or Sunday. So every weekend I was probably racing 2 or 3 times. Just keep your practice up, your competition, and staying in shape. Yeah. So I'd race 2-3 times every weekend.
What did you do for a job?
Oh, at the time, I was a journeyman electrician. So I did, get injured a few times. And so then I was single, living at home. So really no worries at that point. Responsibility.
That pays pretty good too, didn't
it? Yes. Yeah, it did. Yeah. Yeah, it did.
So do you still do that for a living? Are you still a
uh,
journeyman electrician? Or did you move on to a different field?
believe it or not, I was able to keep up my journeyman electrician's license. In '98, I got hired by U.S. Airways as a pilot instructor. And so I did that for 23 years, and I was still able to work as electrician on my days off because we had a pretty lucrative schedule at the airlines. And so I actually worked both jobs there for up until recently. And then I actually became an airline pilot here a couple years ago. So that's where I'm at.
So you fly the big jets.
Pretty much, yeah. Close to 100,000 pounds, 76 passengers in the Northeast. Well, we fly the Midwest too, but we do all the busy hubs. Like today, I was in Chicago O'Hare, LaGuardia, Kennedy, Boston. We do all the big hubs.
You're an adrenaline junkie, is what I'm getting.
Yeah, it's pretty thrilling. I thought about the other day. The best way to sum it up is you're bringing 100,000 pounds in at around 150 mile an hour, and you're landing on a 1 mile dead end street. So yeah,
Yeah. So you no different than the 18-year-old kid, riding his three. Now
yeah,
you're just flying
exactly.
a little giant plane.
That's right. Yeah,
And isn't it
yeah,
technically a three-wheeler?
yeah. You're right. They are. They are. You are right. Never thought of
Can't
it
get
that
away
way.
from three-wheelers, can you?
Yep. Back to the three wheeler. See that?
So you won 3 consecutive titles,
Yeah.
almost four, well, almost 5 really, if you count the
Yes.
first season. And
Right.
what did you do after that?
Got married, started a family, and kind of went cold turkey. I think I sold everything, and that was it. I mean, I might go watch one race a year, but that was it until I think it was '04. Lord only knows why. I think Mike Benson somehow, Mickey Dunlap had that 4-stroke tech team, and that's when the Honda only had the 400 EX, and so Mickey did build a pretty good motor, and so I went back and raced pro class then, and but I could tell I didn't have the time and dedication that I needed to run the pro class, and I think my best finish was like third or fourth in Florida, but that was a mud fest, so I had the advantage there. And so I did find the first hour, but after that I was dying. So that was that comeback.
How long had it been since you raced? So you won.
Yeah, I would say '88 was my last year I raced, and that was on the Suzuki Quad Racer. Yeah.
Why did you go from a Honda to a Suzuki?
Because this
This is going to be a good story, huh?
yes it is. So in '85, when I beat Team Honda at Loretta Lynn's, so might as well bring this story up now, some
Well,
of
yeah,
it.
let's just clarify that. You just go ahead and go run with it, because I've seen the
Okay.
timesheet.
Okay. So, Dave Coombs is telling us guys, hey, I got Team Honda coming to Loretta Lynn's race this spring, in 1985. Says, so, they come with their box fans, or I think they might have brought their fifth wheel trailer at the time. So, they had Marty Hart and Mike Coe were running a 2-stroke class. And so who else did they have? They had Curtis Sparks and Stevie Wright, and who else was there? I think there's more. I don't know if Waxendorfer was at Loretta Lynn's for that race or not. so they show up, and so we started down the field, and they funneled us into the woods. And sure enough, Marty Hart got the whole shot. So, but I'm next. I'm right on his tail. So we're bumping and weaving through the woods, Marty and I, and it's probably halfway through the first lap. He gets flat tired. To this day, I'm like, wow, what a you know great racer. He pulled over and waved me by because he knew he's holding me up, and so I just took it from there. And once I get out in the lead and get in my pace, I kind of run away with it. And the I sent you the timesheet on the finals of that race. I saw where Mike Coe says I helped them prep their bikes and they all beat me. But if you pull up that timesheet, I beat Marty Hart by 3 minutes and I beat Mike by 8 minutes once I looked at that sheet. So that following week, first I think Suzuki called me, and then Kawasaki called me and gave me offers to ride for them. And then Dave Coombs called me. That's the other thing, Mike mentioned that Honda picked its team rider strictly on results, but I beg to differ because Dave Coombs called me. He says, "Hey, Tom, don't commit to anybody." He says, Bruce Ogilvy from Team Honda called me. He wanted to know what kind of guy you were because I guess Honda doesn't just want anybody on their team. They want somebody that's a good sportsman, nice guy, not some wild card guy. So he says Honda's putting a package together, I think, to make you an offer. So don't commit to anybody if you want to ride for Honda. So sure enough, Honda called me after that. So that's when I got on Team Honda.
That's pretty awesome story right there.
Oh yeah, and I think the dirt wheels.
So you got a Honda ride by beating the Honda guys.
Right.
Now you got to tell me how you ended up on a Suzuki.
Okay. So should I withhold names to protect the guilty, or
no? Put it up. I mean, at 40 years, does anybody really care anymore?
That's right. You're right. So again, no social media, no way for quick communication. So it's the off season, and so Dirt Wheels magazine or ATV News or whatever, subscribe to everything would come out, and it said the following year for 1986, Team Honda wasn't having a team. I'm like, oh man, that stinks. But they were going to still have contingency money, and I did pretty well with contingency money. So sure enough, the next month in the issue, it says Team Honda announces their cross-country support team. I'm like, what's this? So it was Mike Holbert, Teddy Trey, and I don't know if there's one or two other riders. So I called Bruce Ogilvy. I'm like, hey, Bruce, how come I'm not on your factory support team? He says, well, Mike Holbert told me that you weren't racing this year. I mean, I said, you couldn't give me the courtesy of calling me and asking me personally. So I wasn't Honda support rider that year. And I was thinking about quitting then. My mechanic says, let's go do it, Tom, and show them that, they made a mistake not putting you on the team that year, and we'll take all their contingency money. So I did do really well that year and took a lot of contingency money and the title.
And you rode a Honda that year, even though
yes,
you weren't on their team.
That's true. Yes. So still didn't answer your question about how I got on a quad racer. So 87, still in a Honda. And that was the last year I think Honda had any support or contingency money. And Suzuki offered me a ride for 88. And yeah, things didn't go well from the beginning. I mean, I thank Suzuki to this day, gave me a quad, parts and all, but I mean, everything from the geometry, I was never comfortable in the quad racer. Maybe it's just me compared to the four tracks, and the trick for cross country at the time, we're talking 88, quad racer was put as many Honda parts as you could on the Suzuki, whether it's tie rods, steering stems, or that was the trick, put as many Honda parts on as you could. But I mean, I had spindles just breaking off again, leading a race, and a spindle would break off, and it's like yeah, this isn't good. And so my last race, the parting words were, if I couldn't race a Honda, I wasn't racing. And so that was it.
That was it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do your children know that you were a factory rider?
Yeah, that comes up occasionally, and now with this podcast, and, yeah, they do. I still have a lot of the articles. I don't know if you heard me. That Dirt Wheels article when I beat Team Honda was "Farm Boy beats Team Honda" was the headline for that article. So I was the farm boy, but yeah, I still have the Honda. I still have the Honda contract. Yeah.
So have they ever asked questions about it? Ever, get detailed about,
Oh
their dad
yes,
was somebody in that industry?
yes. I still have a lot of the Dirt Wheels magazines. And at that time, I was in pretty much every issue, and of course, all the articles in there. So there's a lot of reading to do. So, and then they know to this day the easiest way to get cut out of my wheels buy anything but a Honda or an Acura. Yep. Since
Man,
then, that's all I buy. Since then, Hondas or Acuras. Yeah.
okay. Loyal man there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you didn't go back to racing at all after that?
Like I said, I mentioned I think I was '04. I rode for Mickey Dunlap on that 400EX
Yeah.
for Steam.
Was your wife around during the racing much?
She was there in '88. Yeah, when I was on the quad racer. So and that was a very good year. So
Oh
yeah.
man, so she never got to see the highlights.
No, you're right. But there was a video out there. I think I asked, Bob Klein and Jimmy Wise. They didn't get back to me what year that video was produced. I think it might have been 1983 or four on the series because we were on three wheelers, and so it was a really good video of all the races and stuff. And so it's out there somewhere. But so that was really good stuff.
Did you travel anywhere like to the West Coast or anything to race, or was it just the series back there?
Yes, we did. That brings up probably one of the best races in my career, other than the Team Honda race. But let me see, about six or eight of our top riders, they had a race, and I was surprised they had it in Racer Productions website, even though they didn't host the race. It was out in Washington. But anyhow, so we all traveled clear to Washington State because, of course, they put it at the beginning of the series to make everybody go because you didn't want to miss out on a race and lose any points. And when it comes down to the end of the year, it's too late if you didn't have those races there. So we all go out to Washington State, and so we're out there at least a few days prior to the race, and everybody's trying to get their bikes jetted in. And the first story of the trip was, so we all go riding, and I think it's a national forest there, 100,000 acre forest, and so we all start off riding, and how you get separated a little bit and come to a fork in the road, and next thing you see, they're up on this other road, and you can't get between the two roads, and so everybody's getting split up, and now it's getting dark, and of course we're on our race quads, I think at that time, or three wheelers, and we don't have any lights on our race bikes, and it's getting dark, and everybody's split up. Now we're into groups of like two, and everybody's on their own trying to get back. So it was, I mean, any road we could find, we were getting on the road because the other thing, we're low on gas now. So everybody made it back safely at different times. We all got in some a lot later than others. So we thought we had our bikes all jetted in right. I think the elevation was high out there. It was like Seattle area. So we walked the track, some of it, and we see it's pretty open. And typically with our oversized tank, it was only like 3 or 4 gallon tank on a 250R that I could finish a race. I would have it on reserve, going all in on the bet that I could make it. If I had enough of a lead, I'd stop and get a gallon just to be safe. So we see this track's kind of wide open. So Teddy and I are actually out in the lead, and I think we pretty much lapped everyone up to the top 3 or 4 place people. Teddy and I are just pushing each other. I got a little bit of a lead, so I get the white flag. So they had you go out through this campground, and sure enough, I start through the campground, and my bike's like blah blah. I'm like, what's wrong? First thing you check is your dead man kill switch. Is it the kill switch? To get wet. So it's not that. The kid's yelling, check your gas. I'm like, what do you mean check my gas? Because I actually got a gallon of gas too, because I did have a little bit of a lead. Sure enough, I look and it's bone dry. Luckily, I pulled off the track enough that when Teddy went by, Teddy didn't know he's in the lead now. So track-wise, I'm about a half mile from the pits, but distance-wise, I'm only 100 yards. So I'm screaming and yelling. I'm going, I need gas. I need gas. So they come running with the gas can. I know I only need like a half tank to finish this race. So they put a little bit of gas and I kick it. And I know Teddy doesn't know I'm behind him now. So I run the whole lap. And when you got to the last mile or so, it was really dusty. It was through these fields, like I said, the home stretch to the finish line. So there was a double jump down onto this field. So it was like, I just catch Teddy right before these double jumps, and he still doesn't know I'm behind him. So the first jump, I land beside him. He looks over and like, shoot. I out jump him on the next one. And once I got to the field, I knew he couldn't see because of the dust. And so that was the most thrilling race, I think.
But so you guys had a great little battle, and he didn't even know. He thought he was in second place the whole time.
Yeah, knowingly at the beginning we had a great battle, and then unknowingly at the end we had a great battle also. Yeah.
How many of the guys that you raced with back then do you still talk to today?
Just a handful, like the same guys I rode with. Chuck DeLudo, Bob Klein, Roy Daines, Jimmy Wise, his wife Sue, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. No.
I had Bob here in studio on Saturday with Hannah Hunter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hannah's a pleasure.
Well, it's kind of like royalty, she's gonna be a legend, a former legend.
Oh yeah.
I felt bad because we were standing outside, in the driveway, and I looked over at it and I go, I always thought she'd be bigger. She's a little bitty thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. She's a sweet girl. Yeah. Did Bob tell you about the racer reunion he had at his place a few months back?
So that's where this all stems from, is because Jeffrey Hinson from Dirt Wheels told me about it, and it didn't really click. And then he started telling me more about it, and he sent me a list of all the attendees. Well, maybe not all of the attendees, but a list. And I got the list with phone numbers, and the first person I call is Bob. You were actually the second person I called. But the first person I called was, he was at the top of the list. I'm just going down the list, and I haven't even I've only got 4 people deep on there, and I have to wait till I get a little farther down and tape the episodes so that I can, not be too far out on ahead of myself, if you understand what I mean by that.
Right.
But Bob goes, yeah, I'd love to be on the show, but I'm going to be in San Diego at the Supercross.
Right.
And he goes, well, where do you live? And I go, well, I'm about 20 minutes from the stadium.
Oh, wow. Huh.
So
yeah.
He goes, And I just asked him, I said, well, do you think you guys would stop by and just do a show in studio? And he goes, well, sure.
Right.
So I gave him a little tour of where the whole company started from in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a customer I had to meet because they were early. So I took them over to our current shop, and that used up all of our time. They actually stayed longer than they were supposed to, but it was great to get to visit with them.
Oh yeah.
I hope that I get to do an individual episode with both of them, because there's so many questions I want to ask Hannah about her racing and her growing up and the way she does it. And then Bob's still got a whole bunch of stories to tell, which
Oh
that
yeah. Right.
you were
Right.
there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So did Bob tell you what he did at his reunion?
No, I didn't get the whole spiel of that.
Okay, so just to keep the old rivalries going, he laid out a small course on his property. I don't know, it's probably 3-4 miles, and so the trick was everyone was timed on his four-wheeler, his I guess it was a 70 or 90, whatever it was, and so everybody got timed on the 70 to see who would win the cross country race. So anyhow, Hannah beat me. I finished third, and I beat Teddy Trey. So just to keep the rivalry going. But Hannah had a weight advantage over me, so not to take
Right.
anything away from her.
So
So
who
I
won?
thought that was pretty cool. I'm sorry.
Who won?
Um, Hannah's friend, he's a pro-am rider. He's moving up to the pro
Steve?
class. I'm
Steve?
sorry. Um,
Is it Steve?
yeah, I think it was. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's her
yeah.
boyfriend.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Steven. Yeah. Right. Yep.
Yep.
That's it. He won. He won. Yep.
Well, that's not fair. They shouldn't even have been able to ride.
Oh yeah. Yep. So Bob had some good pictures of that. Yeah.
That
Hannah was
sounds like
giving
a
me
big.
some. Yeah, Hannah was giving me some tips. I didn't know in those automatics that if you held the shift lever up between gears, that it would rev higher. Yeah. So he's got a picture of that. It's pretty good.
That's pretty awesome. You
Yeah.
know, she doesn't even realize, I don't think, the legacy that is there with you guys and what you did to build our sport.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sure come a long way. I know the winnings we were making then compared to what they're making now. And it's just phenomenal and good for them. They deserve it. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
They don't make really that much.
No, they don't. I thought they did.
No, they don't make that much.
Oh,
Mike was telling me that some of the purses that they got at some of the nationals were huge until the AMA got involved. Once the AMA got involved, it wasn't as good.
really? So
Yeah.
they limit the purses?
They got rid of the guys that would pay the purses, or the money would go
Oh,
to the AMA, and then they'd only give a pittance to the riders.
no way. Wow. I didn't know that.
I'm not a huge fan of the AMA, but
Well, I didn't know that. Because I knew the sponsors, like all professional sports players, athletes, that your sponsors, made up a lot of your income. So,
yeah, and they took some of the purse money away to pay the organization,
uh,
to do the and if you look at all the guys in those organizations, they're wealthy.
wow, wow, yeah.
Same deal. The guys that are doing all the work aren't the rich ones,
No,
you
you're
know.
right. Yep. Yeah.
In
Not
our
much
industry.
trick. Yeah, not much trickle down effect there, huh?
No, I don't think there's any such thing as trickle down. But we are getting a trickle. That's
Yeah,
about.
yeah, that's about it. Huh. Yeah, because I talked to. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I saw Tim Cotter, who was our announcer at the time. I'm not sure what Tim's status is now, but I saw him on a flight actually. I was going to work, and yeah, he told me those guys were, when this is, a few years back when Bill Balance was the top rider at the time. That he was making decent money at the time. But that's another thing. When I was looking at the race results on GNCCRacing.com, uh, we're talking ATV wise. I saw in the last 39 years, guess how many champions there were?
I didn't count it, but I'm not sure.
There's only 9.
Wow.
39 years. And so that's what I wanted to mention. You get a top rider, he gets his biked out in, quad, 3-wheeler, whatever it may be, and it's hard to dethrone him. Unless you got a real good up and coming rider who's they're dialed in, they get their bike dialed in. Uh, you know, Bill Balance and Barry Hawk, how many championships they won? I don't know, 9, 11 total each. Chris,
Well, Balance won 9, Barry Hawk won 7,
Chris Borich.
Walker Fowler won 7, Borich won 7.
Yeah, so you got Chuck DeLulo, Bob Sloan, myself, Teddy Trey, and
Teddy
yeah,
won 1, you won 3, Sloan won 2, DeLulu won 3.
yeah.
And then there's gosh, I just had the list up and now I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, Bryce Neal, Adam no, Bryce Neal.
Bryson Neal's won 2.
Yeah, right.
I
You
don't think
mentioned
I'm missing anybody.
Walker Fowler, right?
Yeah, Walker Fowler got 7.
Yeah.
Borich got 7, unless I'm
Okay.
wrong. I think it's 7.
Yeah.
Balance is the record holder with 9.
Right.
And Hawk had 7.
Mhm.
And I believe that Bob was the last champion before they started this streak where there were multiple years,
Right.
consecutive.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So.
I think that was the year that he passed, is the first year that Barry won his first title.
Oh. Okay. I didn't realize that. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Barry lives 15 miles from me. That was another neat thing I saw they had in there. National titles by state. And I wrote that down. I think Pennsylvania had 19 because you had myself, Chuck DeLulo, Barry Hawk, Chris Borich. Us 4 were from PA.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That is.
That is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and then, I don't know all of the women's champions, but there's quite a few from Pennsylvania as well.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yep.
What was your most memorable race ever?
Oh, well, of course it had to be the Team Honda race. Winning that. Because because nobody beats Team Honda, and so that was definitely the most memorable, I guess you'd say, rewarding. Yeah, the most thrilling would have been Teddy and I out in Washington. Yeah, that's the most thrilling.
Where was your favorite place to race?
I would say Big Bear, even though I personally think it was the roughest track in the series. I did pretty well there. Like I said, the rocks there was so unusual. I mean, this is probably, 40, 50-pound rocks that are sticking half out of the ground. So it's like a bunch of watermelon sized rocks. And the best thing I found out to do with them was just skipping across them, trying to keep your front end up as much as possible and just skipping across these big, I still call them rocks, or boulders. But yeah, that was definitely my personal opinion, the toughest race is Big Bear.
And you mentioned where that was. Can you tell me where that exactly was again?
Yeah, it's in Brewston Mills, West Virginia, and it's I think it's like 20 miles east of Morgantown. Yeah.
And they don't race there anymore.
No, unfortunately, spectator was killed. Uh, just pit riding, and how insurance companies. You know, it was no way you could have another race here. Yes. Yep.
What about, so the Blackwater ended? Can you tell me, do you remember why they stopped the Blackwater?
I think for the same reason. The spectators were getting out of control. I think they, at the towards the end there, they had the National Guard there for the weekend, for acting as military police and state troopers, um, because they got such a crowd and they got out of control. Um, there was, a few fatalities like every year of spectators that because of the you know crowds getting out of control. Um, yeah, so I don't know all the details other than it was getting out of hand, fatalities and stuff. So, and I also heard someone who owned the land, or if the government bought it in a certain section there, that I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, I don't know all the details. I just know when I went, oh man, it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah, yeah, it
You
was.
ever seen the
Yeah,
movie Deliverance?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
So,
yep,
I mean, I'm this wide-eyed kid, I think I was 21, maybe 22. I'd never been to a race like this. And I'm in the front seat, Bob's driving, we drive across the bridge, and there's, I knew that the National Guard was there and there was police, but I didn't know that they didn't cross the bridge, right?
yeah,
And the first thing I see is a guy buzzing down the deal, holding the Budweiser, riding his three-wheeler, no teeth. His beard is split down the middle, flapping over each shoulder, and he's just having a ball. No shoes on, no helmet, just
yep.
freaking buzzing across the field there. And I'm like, oh God. And he goes, and Bob looks at me and goes, yeah, you're in a whole new world, boy.
That's right. Oh yeah, the Canaan Valley, that area is really beautiful, wilderness wise, and yeah, that was a great race. Yeah, I loved the long laps because you never had a problem with lap riders. There was nothing but you know abandoned machines. The second lap, it was just carnage everywhere.
Wow, that's crazy. I wish they would have a race like that now.
I know. Yes, that would be great. You know,
Yeah, but somebody always ruins it for the masses.
right, and it wasn't the riders. That's the unfortunate thing. That was a
Right.
great place to race, and again, like Big Bear, it was a spectator that pit riding that got killed, and that was the end of the race there. So it's
Yeah, probably doing
too great.
something they weren't.
Yeah, yeah. Probably alcohol involved, but yeah, it's two great places that we raced that never happen again.
Yeah, it's a bummer deal. Tom Tokay, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to tell a little bit of your story on ATV Talk. This whole thing was started for history, and for you to bring a little bit of your history from back east to us, I really, really appreciate your time.
Oh, sure. I enjoyed it. I'm glad to share my stories, and uh, you know, as time is passing and history, it's become history. Yeah, for sure.
Well, what we'll set up next time for you when you come on is we'll get a group of you guys to all come on at the same time, and you guys can tell some of the group stories together. I'm sure that'll be a lot of fun.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. That'll be good. Yep. Okay. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Well, make sure you tell the family thank you very much for letting me borrow you, and you have a wonderful night, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to share us with your family and friends. The podcast is available on all streaming platforms, and you can find us on social media as ATV-TALK Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter.